What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
No, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You are watching 40 Days, 40 Nights with me, your boy EJ Stewart, where I do 2 shows per week, no longer per day, 2 per week. One Tuesday at 6 p.m., one Friday at 8 a.m. So this is the first leg of this week's episodes of 40 Days and Counting. We started this last week. It is the spiritual continuation, sequel, whatever you want to call it, of my 40 Days and 40 Nights series, where I did a sports pop culture show talking about all the things that EJ loves, all the things on EJ's mind. And we got a jam-packed show today, so I'm really excited to have this one and join you guys for what should be a great show to discuss plenty of things going on in the world of sports, and a little bit of superhero news we're going to get to as well. So we're going to talk about the Final Four being set. We have our teams, we have our matchups. You'll have UConn facing Illinois. You'll have a battle of the heavyweights, 2 number 1 seeds, Arizona facing Michigan next Saturday in Indianapolis. We'll hold a preview for Friday, but we will break down those teams' victories over the course of the weekend, particularly having to talk about Connecticut's win for the ages. You want to talk about all-time comeback, all-time collapse. It all fits the bill when it comes to what we saw the UConn Huskies achieve as they came back from 19 points down to beat the Duke Blue Devils. The number 1 overall seed in this tournament is now out. So we'll talk about how we're going to kind of extrapolate from what to make of Duke. A second year in a row where you have a massive collapse in a big spot last year in the Final Four against Houston. Up 6 points, 30 seconds left, can't close. Up double digits in the second half, can't close. And now this past Sunday, you're up 19 points against UConn. UConn looks absolutely hapless for much of the first half, and you can't close. So this was a really tough one for the John Shire resume and the Duke program. One that I may say, dare I say rather, worst loss in program history. We'll break it down. We'll discuss. I want to hear what you guys got to say about that. So we'll talk about that. We also got plenty of stuff to talk about in the NBA. Big news happening regarding these new proposals that the NBA will be overseeing to determine whether or not these will be ones that will be chosen to curb tanking. So the NBA later, I think next month or in May, I believe, is when it's expected to be announced. They will review 3 proposals that have been pushed by the league to determine if any of these can get picked to overhaul the NBA draft lottery. And I'll say this, these are pretty significant changes to the draft lottery. Now, it's not as aggressive as I would have been. It's not as progressive as I would have been, where I said just put every team in the lottery and flatten the odds, and there you go. You don't got to worry about tanking anymore. We're not there, but all 3 of these different proposals would make substantial change. So we'll break down whether or not these are a step forward in the right direction for the league. Also, some interesting comments from Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban was on a podcast, the Intersections podcast, where he spoke about not just his regret in selling the Dallas Mavericks to Patrick Dumont, but also, for the first time, at least I've heard, really implicating Jason Kidd as a primary reason for why Luka Doncic was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. Luka Doncic is, despite what's been the kind of weird turmoil, maybe that's just Lakerland, maybe that's La La Land, maybe that's Showtime, I don't know. I've been a little surprised, and I found it a little bit bizarre how much we've talked about how bad everything is with the Lakers much this year, and yet in a tough Western Conference, they've been sitting around the 3rd or 4th seed for much of the season. Luka Doncic is, despite some of his shortcomings defensively, is leading the league in scoring, having another awesome season. And the Dallas Mavericks, obviously, while they do have certainly a future face of the franchise in Cooper Flag, they're mired in the lottery. So I think if you'd rather be the Lakers or Mavericks, I think there's no question who you'd rather be at this point in time. So Luka's having a great year with the Lakers. Meanwhile, in Dallas, still a lot of frustration seeing Luka do what he's doing with the Lakers, and now Mark Cuban, who it feels like this guy does more podcasts than J. Cole. I feel like I see Mark Cuban doing some interview, posting some long tweet, he just seems like he's got a lot more time on his hands now that he's not running an NBA team. Maybe that's why we're hearing so much from him, and maybe why we're hearing a little bit of a stream of consciousness from him. But we'll talk about these comments that I was actually quite surprised by, to hear him really, again, implicate Jason Kidd in the trade for Luka Doncic in a way that I don't think we've heard in the past. We also have a former lottery pick who is no longer in the NBA. Jaden Ivey was waived by the Chicago Bulls amid some, I don't know how to describe it, they were anti-LGBTQ comments. But even beyond just the LGBTQ comments, and I don't know if that was a straw that camel's back, just kind of overall seemingly unhinged behavior from him. This is not an anti-Christian take at all. I know he was speaking a lot about the righteous and people who are saved, and he clearly identifies himself as a devout Christian. But his message seemed quite harsh. His message seemed quite judgmental. And for a guy who is a professional NBA basketball player, it has been a little odd to see his movements in these very long Instagram lives where he's essentially just condemning people who are saying they're Christians and still condemning them. Like, he just doesn't seem to be in the greatest place. So we'll discuss a little bit about what happened with Jaden Ivey. He is no longer in the league. He was cut by the Chicago Bulls. That's a former number 4 pick in the draft, cut by the Chicago Bulls. We also got some new Hall of Famers. Really exciting stuff, and exciting for your boy EJ because you got some personal ties to some of these Hall of Famers. So Amari Stoudemire, former Knick, he goes into the Hall of Fame. He'll be inducted next fall. Candace Parker. You'll also have Elena Delle Donne. You'll have Doc Rivers, which is quite funny to me considering of all the years for Doc Rivers to get elected into the Hall of Fame, it's going to be maybe his worst coaching job of his career. Is the year that he gets elected to the Hall of Fame. It's classic Doc Rivers there. And Mark Few, Gonzaga head coach, all elected to the Hall of Fame. So we'll give those folks their flowers later in the show. And finally, we got to talk about this Supergirl trailer. If I didn't mention it yet, we will talk about this Supergirl trailer that came out. This is the second trailer to come out from DC. So we got to discuss it. I thought this trailer was the one. I was really impressed with what DC did with this trailer. And coming off of having read Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, I actually just finished that book last week. I kind of now the picture's coming into focus in a major way in terms of how they're trying to tell this story. So we'll get to all this stuff, man. It should be a fun night here on 40 Days and Counting with your boy EJ Stewart, streaming live in multiple spots, including live on YouTube, New Generation Media. Shout out to the folks following me and subscribe to me on YouTube. If you're not already subscribed, do me a favor. Please subscribe to the channel. New Generation Media is where you'll get these live episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights on YouTube. New Generation Media and New Generation Media is where you'll find us. And while you're there, if you can, give us a like, give us a thumbs up. That helps us a ton. We appreciate the efforts with you guys doing that. If you can, give us a like. That would be great. If you can, get in the comment section, get engaged if you want to do that. That also helps. So if you can get engaged in that way, comment, say you love the show, say you hate the show, say I'm an idiot, say I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. Whatever you want to say, it's all good. Make sure you get into the comment section. Make sure you like this video. Again, all those things help. We're also streaming live on X. EJ_Stewart is where you'll find me on X. Be sure to follow me there. Make sure you also follow the show media, New Generation Media page as well. Not just me, EJ_Stewart, where we are live. Also be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. The New Generation Media X account. New Generation Pods, where you'll find us on X. Again, I am streaming live, EJ_Stewart on X. And we're streaming live on Instagram. Action EJ is where you'll find me on Instagram. Shout out to the folks who are watching on Instagram. Much love to you guys. And let's get the ball rolling on 40 Days and 40 Nights. Again, if you like this show and you want to catch this show, and perhaps you can't watch the whole thing live or you can't watch the whole thing via video, all good. You can always go to our podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network, and get all the audio versions of 40 Days and Counting, plus all the other content we do for New Generation Media. You want to get the audio version, maybe you're on the run, maybe you got to work out, maybe you got to, which is why my hair's tied up right now because I worked out a little bit earlier today. Maybe you got to work out, maybe you're driving, maybe you're on the train, whatever the case may be. You can catch all these episodes wherever you get your podcast. Just search New Generation Podcast Network. let's get the ball rolling. Let's talk about this Final Four. So the Final Four is set. You're going to have Michigan and Arizona. You'll have UConn and Illinois. UConn and Illinois will be the first game of the doubleheader around 6 o'clock. And then 8:30, 9 o'clock-ish is when you'll get the Michigan-Arizona game. So we got to begin with what happened in D.C. and what is, in no undisputed terms, an absolute classic. UConn, of course, did not win that championship last year, but previous 2 years, back-to-back national champions, one of the true standard bearers of current college basketball, modern-day college basketball under Dan Hurley, against Duke, who remains and has continued to be the standard bearer of college basketball in the post-Coach K era. This was a battle that I think people expected to be a close game, expected to be maybe one for the ages, and for a lot of this game, it did not look like that. Duke really manhandled UConn for much of this game. They looked faster. They looked more aggressive. They got easier shots. UConn shot the ball extremely poorly in the first half, and Duke has had the best defense in college basketball for much of this season. So it wasn't so much a surprise to see them play so well defensively, but they really shut the water on UConn. At a certain point in this game, they were able to get the lead up to 19 points. It really seemed like UConn was dead in the water and on their way to an exit, and Duke was on their way to the Final Four. And then the second half happened, and it just felt like what we've seen from Duke in the past kind of started to rear its ugly head in the worst way. Started to get a little sloppy with the ball, started to have a couple empty possessions, defense started to slip. UConn started making a couple of baskets. Got to give a major shout out to Tarish Reed, who I think really was the guy who kind of kept them together in this one, right? He was really the only guy in the first half that was really giving them anything, and it allowed some of those other guys to see, okay, wait, we still got the big dog eating in the post. He's playing Boozer essentially to a standstill. This is going to give us a chance if we start making some shots. So they start hitting some shots. They have a huge second half. They outscored Duke 44-28 in the second half, but despite that comeback, it still appeared like Duke was going to have this game potentially under wraps. They have the ball, less than 10 seconds left, and they're inbounding. All they have to do is essentially get fouled, make 2 free throws, and the ball game's essentially over. And then all hell breaks loose, which is kind of what happens with March Madness. This is what happens with college basketball. This is what makes March Madness great. And I know this is not someone who people like to give a lot of credit to, and the take I don't love, so I'm not even wanting to give him a lot of credit. But I do think that one thing I've heard Skip Bayless say about March Madness, I think he's right about, which is the nature of the tournament and the youth of the players create the madness. It's these random neutral site games, sometimes on short rest, against teams you haven't really scouted all year. And you got 18, 19. Now you do have now some 22, 23, 24-year-olds too. But you also have a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-olds trying to make crucial decisions under immense pressure. What could go wrong, right? I mean, pretty much everything can go wrong, right? So that's what happened. And Duke is trying to inbound the ball. The ball finds its way after a couple passes to Caden Boozer, one of Duke's super freshmen. And Caden Boozer makes a mistake. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. In an effort to play keep away, where he saw 2 wide open Duke guys around down the court as 2 UConn players, Caravan being one of them, was coming after him. Tries to throw it over 6'9" Alex Caravan. That goes terribly poorly. Caravan tips the ball up, finds his way for a steal. Nah, they're coming down. He throws the ball to Braden Mullins. Mullins is about 35 feet out. Isaiah Evans is there, but I don't think he thought he was going to shoot it. I don't know why, because there's only 2 seconds left. I don't think he thought he was going to shoot it from that deep. He also seemed a little shell-shocked at what was going on. And Braden Mullins just lets it fly and just absolute nylon. And then mayhem on the UConn sideline. Dan Hurley and the whole UConn contingent going insane. And the Duke contingent on the other side is the epitome of brutality, as one John Rothstein would say. And that was essentially the ball game. There was 0.3 seconds left, and there was no opportunity for Duke to come up with a miraculous shot. No Christian Laettner this time around. And UConn wins this one and punches their ticket to the Final Four. So I will say this, on the UConn front, a miraculous win. I mean, you shoot 22% from 3, you only make 5 threes, and you find a way to just stick around long enough to find a way to steal it in the end. I mean, Duke led this game for 96% of this game. I mean, this looked absolutely positively over. And it wasn't even just that they were down 19, because, even in college basketball now, we're seeing that not necessarily every lead is safe with the 3-ball. It was just how dominant Duke looked. It just looked like UConn really, outside of getting Tarris Reed involved, and he actually ended up getting in some foul trouble too. So that kind of also muddied what any potential, comeback could happen with them. Like, it just looked like Duke was a much better basketball team. It looked like this was a mismatch. So it was stunning to see Duke collapse in this way. On the UConn front, you got to give a ton of credit to, again, Tarris Reed at 26 points in this game. He had 9 rebounds. He's been a force. I think he's been probably one of the most underappreciated star players in college basketball this year. He's so physical in the post. He's so good on the glass. And, he's not someone that I think is getting, and obviously, a ton of NBA praise. That doesn't really happen for these kind of 4-year senior post-up type players. But I love the way this kid competes. Watching UConn all year, he has stood out. And he's up against the best, right? Cam Boozer is the best player in college basketball. He's been the best freshman in college basketball. And he's probably going to be the Naismith Player of the Year, Wooden Player of the Year. And he won't maybe be the number 1 pick in the draft. He's certainly expected to be a top 5 pick. And he plays them to a standstill. Boozer has 27-8. Tarris Reed has 26 and 9. He also led the team in assists with 3 assists. So Tarris Reed, absolute monster, kept them in this game. His activity, his physicality continued to give Duke problems throughout the game. Also a big part in this win, because I want to give UConn their flowers, and we'll get to Duke, trust me. We're going to have plenty of time for that. But I want to give UConn their flowers, because I think there was one aspect of this game that I think was a major difference in why they even had a chance in this one. Only 5 turnovers. And as badly as they were playing offensively so much in this game, a lot of it basically came down to they couldn't get good shots. They couldn't get good looks. But they were not turning the ball over, which, while Duke was really good in the first half offensively, it wasn't as if Duke was consistently getting easy runouts, easy layups, right? Duke was going to have to continue to execute well offensively in order to keep their lead. UConn didn't give it away. They didn't allow Duke to have easy baskets, so they kept their turnovers down. So the UConn backcourt did a great job. Malachi Smith, Dembry, obviously Mullins as well, who had another really good game after he had been struggling from 3, and we'll get to him in a second. He, of course, hits the big 3, but he hit some shots as well. This was, kind of like a balanced attack outside of Reed in the second half to get them back, but taking care of the ball was huge in this one, and obviously they turned up the pressure defensively. They turned up the heat, putting Reed onto Boozer despite the foul trouble. Ended up being, again, the right move. He had 3 fouls, and he didn't get another one the rest of the game. So he did a phenomenal job with that. And then Dan Hurley, right? This is, there's no accident with him. I know we could, I want to get to that head. It wasn't a headbutt, but the nose to nose he went with the referee in a second. But just, again, giving flowers real quick. This is what UConn is, right? I mean, he preaches mental toughness. He preaches staying calm under pressure. And for a guy who doesn't necessarily express maybe staying calm under pressure, his team does, right? And his team never panicked. And it's not an accident that you get to all the Final Fours that they've gotten to under Hurley and the national champions that they got to. It's not an accident you make these kind of miraculous comebacks. So he deserves a ton of credit. He's the best coach in college basketball, and he showed it yet again against a lot of people I think maybe after this season would have been crowned the best coach in college basketball. Dan Hurley had another one up his sleeve, and he deserves a lot of credit, but he deserves to give a lot of credit to his kids, because his kids showed so much moxie, so much grit, and never giving up. And even to the last play, not fouling initially, trying to go for the steal, and then they get the steal, and then Mullins, a guy who he recruited, a guy who I saw, it was the day he committed on, I think this is on CBS HQ. He's either CBS HQ or 247 was doing a stream. And I forget who the commentator was or who the analyst was, so apologies to them. But the first thing the guy says in his hit about Braden Mullins, he's like, well, this guy is in the gym range. There's not a shot in terms of distance that he can't hit. Like, he walks into the gym, he's a threat to score because of his range. And it's ironic that in the moment he signs with the Huskies and he puts on the UConn hat, and the first analysis about his game is his unlimited range. He hits a Steph Curry style logo 3 to send his team to the Final Four. It's very apropos for, again, a Braden Mullins who played really well in the Sweet 16 after what has been essentially a month of him not being able to find his shot. He shot terribly in the Big East tournament. He shot terribly in the last 3 or 4 games of the season. That Marquette loss that didn't allow them to win the conference and gave the conference to St. John's in the regular season. He was terrible in that game. He had not been shooting the ball very well, to the point where I was wondering if he was hurt or something. I'm like, this is a guy who was supposed to be a good shooter. He can't buy a shot. And he started to right the ship a little bit in the last game. And then this one, while he didn't shoot the ball well for most of this game, he hit the 1-3 he had to hit. And it was the biggest shot of the game and one of the biggest shots in UConn history. Right up there, I think Rip Hamilton's shot against Washington, right up there with Ray Allen's shot in the Big East championship game against Allen Iverson in Georgetown. Definitely one of the biggest shots in UConn history, and they go on to win. So you have a great comeback. You also have a massive collapse. So we got to talk about it on the Duke side. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say I feel bad for Duke. I think that's un-American. I think we love rooting against Duke for reasons that I think are quite valid. I think they bring a lot of hate against them, or at least they have for a large part of their existence under the Coach K regime. It doesn't mean they're not an incredible program. It doesn't mean they're not, again, one of the standard bearers of college basketball. But they have been very hateable. They do have a very holier-than-thou approach to how they present themselves as a basketball program. And it seemed like this team embraced that, right? You had Cam Boozer saying essentially that, he's heard the people talking about how they played against Siena, and that, TCU was going to upset them, and then that St. John's was going to upset them, and that this team was hearing that. So they seemed to also embrace that hate. This wasn't necessarily a hateable unit, but they for a unit that wasn't hateable, they seemed to fully understand the assignment that they were still going to be the villains of this tournament, and they were fine with that. They had I thought, a gritty win against St. John's last Friday night. But then, followed it up with an absolute choke job. And that's what it was. And you hate to say that, but that's just what this was. This is a game that they had no business losing. While I don't feel bad for the Duke program or their fans, I do feel bad for Caden Boozer. Athletes, who give their blood, sweat, and tears to this and heart to this. And especially, I know they're, again, older players. He's not one of them. He is 19 years old. He's a teenager. So to see him make what's a mistake, right? He's trying to make an aggressive play. You see why he threw it up, because if he gets the ball away from Caravan, the game is over, because there's no one in the back in the front court for UConn. There's literally no one there. They could literally just run the clock out. They don't even have to score, or they could just put the ball in the basket, be at 4, and then the game's over anyway. But either way, the game is over. So you make one pass. Literally, it's a one pass. You're in the Final Four deal. He doesn't have to worry about even getting fouled and going to the free throw line. So in theory, I understand what he was trying to do. It's just the execution was terrible, right? I mean, he's a 6'3" guard, 6'2", trying to throw over 6'8" Alex Caravan. He's leaving his feet to make a pass. In that situation, typically, again, I'm not no D1 player or NBA player or anything like that, or a D1 coach, but typically you gotta make some kind of ball fake to get him up in the air so that you can avoid that kind of deflection, because he's just trying to get the ball away so fast. Partly because he doesn't want to get fouled, which is also part of the problem, right? Like, he shouldn't be afraid to go to the free throw line to seal the win for his team. He's just trying to get rid of the ball, especially since he made 6 free throws in the game. He was nails from the free throw line. He's a good shooter. But because he's trying to, make such a quick pass just to get the ball away, trying to play keep away, that was not the important thing at that point in time. The important thing was making sure that UConn did not get the ball back on some kind of steal. You could not turn the ball over. That was more important than even playing keep away. So Boozer tries to make an aggressive play. It does not work out. And then the worst thing that could happen. They come down and hit a bomb from, essentially, this game was in Washington. He hit that one from, Annapolis. Like an absolute bomb for a 3. And that ends up being curtains for the Duke season. It's a terrible loss. To me, I think this is the worst loss Duke has ever had. And, I've had several people. We've gone back and forth. I was on Westwood One Sports Radio over the weekend. So I was talking with the great John Mallory and the great John Lund about where does this rank among worst losses. We've had callers call in. I've also been on social media getting feedback back and forth in terms of where people see this as on the pecking order of worst Duke losses, I think this is the worst one, and I'll tell you why. Because when you think about Duke, you think about, again, cool under pressure. You think about championship pedigree. You think about winning plays, winning mentality, right? Like, those are the things. Forget about the hateable things. Those are the things and to be honest, those are the reasons you really hate Duke. I know you can hate, Christian Laettner stepping on people, JJ Redick and his, cocky ass, right? Like, there's things that they do, slapping the floor when they're trying to get a big defensive stop as a whole unit, the Cameron crazies. Like, yeah, those are the other things. But if they were a bad team, those things wouldn't matter. We wouldn't care. We hate them because they're so excellent. Like, they're the modicum of excellence when it comes to college basketball. So the worst thing a program that is a pillar of excellence can do is to show lack of composure, to show a lack of nerve when the pressure is at its highest, to not show winning pedigree, to not know how to win, to not know how to close. To me, these are the antithesis of the Duke program. Duke, they get on your nerves because they always find a way to win in the end. And sometimes you think that the referees are giving them a break. Sometimes you just don't know why your team couldn't make one more play than they did. But they always seem to make the right play or get the right bounce or get the right situation. They always seem to find a way to win. To me, this is a loss where they did all the wrong things. They turned the ball over. They didn't get good shots. They didn't show poise. And they lost in a way in which you're accustomed to seeing Duke win, right? Like, we've seen Christian Laettner twice send his team to the Final Four on game-winning shots against UConn and against Kentucky. Like, we've seen them come back against teams when it looks like things are, away for them, and if they find a way to steal games. This is not the kind of program that's supposed to lose like that. They don't lose like that. It almost reminds me when the Yankees blew the 3-0 lead to the Boston Red Sox in 2004. Like, what made it, as bad as collapse as it already was bad. But what made it all time was that it was the Yankees. Like, the Yankees never do this. Like, this doesn't happen to these certain programs, certain teams, certain organizations don't have the sense of dread and embarrassment that comes with your team choking. That goes to the Jets. That goes to the Browns. That goes to the Knicks. That goes to, for a long time, the Chicago Cubs. Like, there are certain teams that you think about as losers. Duke, it's nothing like a loser. We don't think of that at all. This loss, to me, looks like a team that didn't know how to win. Looks like a team that was not ready for the moment. And you don't ever associate that with Duke basketball. So that's why I think that this was the worst one. You could mention last year against Houston. That was bad too. But I almost think, to me, this one is worse because it happened last year. Like, that, I actually add last year to this year. It's like, wait a minute, so you lost last year? Where you had a double-digit lead in the second half, you're up 6 points with 30 seconds left, and you turn the ball over left and right to allow Houston an opportunity to come back and win, and they win. And then you didn't learn any lessons from that loss. You lost the exact same way, essentially, but even more heartbreaking fashion. So I think that I'm putting this ahead of last year's loss, even though that was in the Final Four. I'm putting this ahead of I've heard people telling me, what about 99 when they lost to UConn? Duke was a 9.5-point favorite. Duke had a loaded roster. You're talking about Elton Brand, Corey Maggette, Trajan Langdon, Sean Avery. Like, they were loaded. UConn, though, had Rip Hamilton, who arguably is the best player of all those players I just named, and also only had 2 losses that season, and they won a national championship. Yes, it was an upset at the time, but I just think with time moving on, it's like that UConn team was excellent. Like, it wasn't like that was some David hitting the slingshot and beating Goliath in hindsight. And maybe it felt that way the time it happened, but not now. That was a great UConn team. The only losses to me that I think about, and I saw someone mention the Kyrie Irving, Derek Williams game. Essentially, Kyrie comes back. They're in the Sweet 16. They're the number 1 seed. Derek Williams, who did nothing in the NBA, but this game plus a incredible sophomore season allowed him to be the number 2 pick in the draft because of essentially maybe this game. He destroyed Duke, and that was a bad loss. You can mention C.J. McCollum. You can mention Eric Maynor for VCU. They're bad losses. I'm sorry, Duke fans, if I'm bringing you down a really rough memory lane. UNLV, they've mentioned as well to me. I would say, listen, they beat UNLV the next year, so I think that takes away some of the sting from getting blown out by 30 points in the national championship game against UNLV. This one, I think, stands above that. The only two that I will have a debate with are two that I think speak to, again, Duke not feeling like Duke in the moment, which is losing Coach K's final game at Cameron to a North Carolina team that was not ranked. And it's almost twofold, because then I would also add, then losing to North Carolina in the Final Four on Caleb Love's 3. Those two losses, if you want to tell me those two are worse, I can have a discussion about those, because those are devastating, right? This is Coach K. You have to send them off, on a high because of what he did for the program, what he did for college basketball. It's Cameron Indoor Stadium. North Carolina, who wasn't even that great that year, comes in. You expect to just beat them easily, and then you kind of get embarrassed. You lose by 12, 13 points in a game that wasn't that competitive. So you think, okay, that's a fluke, whatever. Let's see what happens when we see them in the tournament. You didn't even know you'd get to the tournament because they were a team that wasn't that lowest seed, or highest seed, rather. They find a way to the Final Four somehow. Now it's Duke Carolina in the Final Four. Again, Hubert Davis, rookie coach, just got fired, by the way, not even the coach anymore. And you can't beat them in the Final Four, and you lose on a game-winning 3 from Caleb Love. Like, yeah, those were tough. Like, Coach K having to end his career coaching basketball with 2 devastating losses to North Carolina is rough. And one being the Final Four, I think that would be the one you probably point to the most and say, hey, that was rough. I can see that. I can see that for sure. But, again, I would speak to this one because it just 19 points up and you lose. And then now, like, it's this, like, iconic moment that you have where Mullins hits his 3. It's a shot that's going to be played forever. Like, this is going to be a play. This is one of the greatest plays in the history of March Madness. This is going to be played right there with Chris Webber calling the timeout. This is going to be played right there with Chris Jenkins' shot, with Christian Laettner's shots, with Gordon Hayward's miss that somehow gets played even though it was a miss, and Duke won that game. Tyus Edney, that I mentioned, Bryce Drew, all those signature, incredible plays. This shot from Braylon Mullins goal. I said I have Braden in the thing. That's why I was messing up. Apologies. I'll fix his name here. No, Braylon Mullins. That's gonna go down forever as one of the great shots. So Duke loses. UConn moves on. They will go on now to face Illinois. But I think for Duke, again, you're going to be thinking about a long off season and wondering how did this happen? How did we let this happen? Now, let's continue, obviously, about the rest of Elite 8 results real quick, and then we'll get to some of the other stuff happening in the world of sports. So, Illinois outlasted Iowa. They advanced to their first Final Four since 2005. If you remember the 2005 team, this was a fun squad. You're talking about D. Brown, Darren Williams, Luther Head, maybe one of the most iconic backcourts in college basketball history. I think when you think about just what college basketball is, and we think of it a lot as a guard game, here this three-headed monster of point guards that were just absolutely killing teams and had only lost one game throughout the regular season, and then only lost, obviously, another game in the national championship game in North Carolina. But Illinois, it's been a long road back. They've kind of been a program that's kind of been a little up and down pretty much since that team. Brad Underwood's come in and steadied them in a major way. He's gotten them to multiple Elite Eights, and now Brad gets them to their first Final Four. They have something going with this two-headed monster of, Wagler plays a lot of point, but he's almost also a wing. These two-headed, just for the sake of this conversation, these two-headed wings with Wagler and now Andre Stojakovic, who is playing at a very high level. You see every tournament there are guys who just get to this tournament and their confidence is high, they're in rhythm, and they're playing perhaps above their skis in comparison to how they played for much of the year. Stojakovic, to me, is the guy for this tournament right now. He was phenomenal in this one again, coming off the bench. He is so aggressive at going to the rack. He is so good at finishing through contact. So having to deal with that guy, and then another guy in Keaton Wagler, who's 6'6", as well, playing point, shooting threes. He had a step-back move on some kid from Iowa that it should also be played among some of the best highlights from this. Certainly should be on any one shining moment montage. Just a 6 step-back move The kid is continuing to rise his NBA stock. And they move on. Iowa, I think, was game in this one. Bennett Sturz certainly tried to shoot them into the Final Four. He had maybe his best game of the tournament here, but just not enough support in this one. I thought Illinois was the better team, which is why I thought they would win, and they did. So now they'll go on to face UConn in what I think will be an awesome game. We'll give picks on Friday for 40 days and counting, the day version, which will happen Friday 8 a.m. But definitely cannot wait to see Illinois, UConn. But you think that's going to be good? We got a heavyweight fight in the second matchup. You're going to have Michigan versus Arizona. Michigan just completely demolished Tennessee, 95-62. They advanced to the Final Four. This was not a surprise to me in terms of Michigan beating up on Tennessee. Great run for Tennessee. I certainly underestimated them. Underestimated their physicality and their toughness because I had them getting knocked out, I think, in the first round. I did not really buy this Tennessee team at all. So for them to get all the way to the Elite Eight, it's a credit to Rick Barnes. But this was going to be a mismatch. They just simply did not have the kind of firepower and the kind of size, despite how physical they are, the kind of size to match with Michigan. Michigan just put on an absolute clinic. And Tennessee's a good defensive team. But Michigan just absolutely tore them apart. The ball movement was impeccable. The shot making was impeccable. And this is what Michigan can do to you. I mean, there are games sometimes where you just step on the court and it just feels like you just had no shot. If you're going to beat Michigan, you're going to have to defend at an extremely, extremely high level. And you're going to have to hope that they're kind of on at least their B game. If they're playing their A game, which is what they played against Tennessee, most teams have no shot. I think the team they're playing on Saturday may have one. I love Arizona. But most teams will not have a shot against Michigan when they're playing like this. I saw what they did Gonzaga. I saw what they've done to UCLA. There are certain games throughout the year where I've watched and I'm like, these are good teams they're facing, and they're making these teams look terrible. Because when they get going, they are a freight train. So they demolished Tennessee. No surprise in that at all. Yaxo Lundenberg has been saying that this could be the best Michigan team of all time. Lundenberg is getting a lot more as we, get more press, more pub for these players. We're hearing more from these guys, more personality. And Lundenberg is definitely becoming a little bit of a character in this tournament run here, but he is their leader. He may be their unconventional leader in terms of his leadership style, in terms of how braggadocious he is. But listen, you score 27 points and 7 rebounds in the biggest game of the season. You could say whatever you want. And right now, he's backing up to talk about this Michigan team potentially being the best team the team has ever had. Now, to do that, you got to at least get to the national championship game to even have a conversation, right? The Fab Five got to the national championship game. Of course, Glenn Rice and Ramil Robinson, they won a national championship. So you got to at least do that if they're going to have an opportunity to make that claim. But Michigan looks really damn good right now. But this is not going to be easy. They got Arizona. This was a tale of two halves. And then beating Purdue 79-64. This is their first Final Four. Get this, since 2001. Again, you want to talk about fun backcourts. How about give you a little Jason Gardner, Gilbert Arenas action? That was the last time we saw Arizona in the Final Four. Shout out to the late, great Lute Olson. Arizona, to me, when they are playing and hitting on all cylinders, even with Michigan in this field, and even with how well Michigan has played, I have personally still felt like Arizona is the best team when they're playing right. And it's not like they've not played right most of the year. They've had an awesome season. But I think because of some recent not even recent, because these early exits actually precede Tommy Lloyd. Scott Miller had, Sean Miller had trouble with them as well. But besides these early exits that they had in past years, this year's Arizona team, they only had 2 losses. So they've taken care of business pretty much all season. They have played in what you could make the case it's the hardest basketball conference. I think maybe you want to make the Big Ten is deeper, maybe, but I think at the top, I don't know if there's a top half of a conference that's been better. Now Michigan with the Big Ten now having 3 teams in the Elite Eight, 2 in the Final Four, maybe they have a case to say, hey, our top half was better. But Arizona played in a tough league. They played a tough non-conference, and they came out of it with just 2 losses. So it's not like this is a team that's giving you much reason to doubt them, though people did. I had Arizona winning this thing before the tournament started, albeit I don't think I had them playing Michigan in this national championship game, so that gives me a little concern. I think I had them playing Iowa State, I think. So that would have been a Big 12 matchup, ironically. So this is a different matchup than I anticipated in terms of who I picked to get to the national championship game. But I just think Arizona, what I love about Arizona is similar to Michigan, is that they can beat you any which way. You want to play slow down, rock fight. All right, Arizona has the ability to lock you down defensively. Cole Pete is one of the best combo forward defenders who can guard 3-4 positions. Bradley's good at the point of attack. You got Krevis in the middle, 7'3". They're really tough defensively. You want to get in the track meet? All right, they can run. Braden Berry's getting out in the break, finishing in the break. Bradley finishing on the break. Cole Pete and his athleticism. They're not necessarily a 3-point shooting team, if you want to say is there any weakness they have, but they just bludgeon you going to the rack and finishing in the paint. So I've been high on Arizona for this entire season when I've watched them play. Albeit besides Gonzaga, they're probably the team I've watched the most. But I felt like they were the best team in college basketball, and we're going to find out because they're facing the only other team that I think has had a claim to that title outside of Duke, who's out of the tournament, and that's Michigan. So that's going to be an absolute barn burner on Saturday. That's going to be a lot of fun, man. Cannot wait to see those matchups. Again, you're going to have Arizona, Michigan. The first game will be UConn and Illinois. That'll be, again, around, actually at the time here, 6:09 is going to be a tip-off for Illinois, UConn. And then at 8:49 Eastern time is when you'll have your matchup between Arizona and Michigan. Those are 2 number 1 seeds. 40 days and counting with your boy EJ Stewart, streaming live right now. Oops, wrong button there. Streaming live right now on X, EJ_Stewart. Streaming live on YouTube, New Generation Media, and streaming live on Instagram. Action EJ's where you'll find me on Instagram. We got my guy Ray Jarvis in the stream. He's been watching on Instagram. Shout out to him. Mr. Brownski to you is also watching on YouTube on IG Live. So shout out to him. If you're watching on YouTube, again, shout out to you guys watching on YouTube. Shout out to the folks watching on X. Again, all these episodes live on the New Generation Media page once they're published. And of course, you can find the podcast episode version of this wherever you get your podcast. So let's shift gears. Still stay with the NBA though. Want to talk about a couple of things. First being this proposal that we got to try to curb tanking. So this is going to be something that's going to be reviewed by the NBA in the coming weeks. They will be trying to find a new method in terms of how they find teams to in terms of the draft lottery. So draft lottery as it is right now, not to get into the weeds of it, but essentially the 4 worst teams in the NBA all have a 15% or so chance of getting the number 1 pick, and then, or maybe it's even less than that. And the odds are they're flattened, more flattened than they've been in recent past, in descending order. And essentially they select lottery balls for picks 1 through 4, and the teams with the highest chances, obviously, you have the highest chance to land in that top 4, the 4 worst teams. But what we've seen this year, I think it's fair to say this has been probably one of the more extreme examples of widespread tanking in the NBA because of how awesome this draft is. There are multiple potential franchise talents. I think you're looking at Darren Peterson. I think you're looking at Caleb Wilson. I think you're looking at Darius Acuff, and of course AJ DeBonta and Cam Boozer. These are 5 guys, and maybe some teams may be really high on Keaton Wagler, Kingston Flemings. Like, I can go on Michael Brown. Like, this is an absolute loaded NBA draft, and certainly there'll be guys who maybe are underheralded who will also become stars in this upcoming league. I think in my opinion, I've said this is the best draft since 2003, and I feel like this, at the very least since 2009, since the Derrick Rose draft that had Rose, Kevin Love and Russell Westbrook. That would be the other one I would put in that category as well. There's studs everywhere. So the NBA and these teams that have been out of it for a while, they have decided we need to make sure we lose as much as possible so we can give ourselves the absolute best chance to get us one of these young studs to help kind of start our rebuild. but it's led to what has been some just anti-competitive practices by several NBA teams. You've had teams that have been sitting guys that appear to be healthy or were fine the night before, and then all of a sudden can't play even though they had no specific injury. You've had teams. I mean, look, I don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but I watched the 2 net games and in completely bizarre fashion against the Knicks and the Warriors, where the plays they drew up to try to win the game on a final shot were so egregious. You do wonder, did they just throw that game? I'm not saying they did, but I'm just saying that is what I asked when I saw it and what other people are asking after seeing it, right? Again, players being sat for second halves after playing in the first half, sat for fourth quarters after playing in the fourth quarter. So there's been, widespread tanking in a way that I think has been different than years past. So are some of the proposals that are the 3 proposals that the NBA is going to look into when they make a decision about whether or not they're going to find a way to curb tanking. So I'm going to read them here, and I'm going to post it here so you can see. It's to your right, my left. You see on the screen there. But here are the 3 proposals reported initially by Shams Charania. So you'll have number 1, 18 teams in the draft lottery. That includes basically seeds 7 through 15. So that would include the play-in teams as well, not just the teams that miss the playoffs. So teams that are playing in and then make the playoffs, they will also be in the lottery. So that'd be 18 teams. That's up from 14. Flattened odds with bottom 10 teams, or excuse me, up from 16. Bottom 10 teams have an 8% chance. The remaining 20%, the odds be distributed in decreasing order from 11 through 18. And a lottery for all 18 picks, which is actually a pretty substantial change. That's one option. Option 2, 22 teams in the lottery. So this would be using a 2-year record. So it wouldn't just be, what happened this current season. We will also combine the record what you did last year. So seeds 7 through 15 plus the 4 playoff first round exits in both conferences. So not just you're talking about your 18 teams that were just, the worst 18 teams, right? You got your 14 that are 14 that missed the playoffs, and then the 4 playing teams from each conference. Now you're saying, no, we're going to do, or 4 playing teams from each conference. Now you're saying we're throwing everybody in there. Also the teams that lost in the first round of playoffs, they also have an opportunity. The only teams that aren't in the lottery are the teams that advance to the second round of the playoffs. Lottery teams would reach a minimum team win total floor each season. So it could be something like 25, for example, meaning that there is no, once you get to a certain number of losses, there is no incentive to continue to keep losing. So let's say the first to 50, you guys become one of the bottom 4 teams. There's no longer an incentive to continue to keep losing, continue to keep throwing game, continue to keep sitting guys, right? That's not the point. We already be locked into your spot. So if a team falls short of the floor, it gets slotted to meet the floor. Top 4 teams drawn as a lottery, which is currently what it is right now. And then the third one is 18 teams in a 5x5 lottery. So the way I saw this described, essentially would be like almost like multiple lotteries in a weird way. So bottom 5 teams have equal odds for the top pick, with a lottery formed for picks 1 through 5. And then the bottom 5 teams have a floor at 10, so they can fall out only as low as 10. And those that fall out of the top 5 get sorted in a separate drawing. So there'd be multiple lotteries. Here's what I'll say about this. I'll leave it up just for the sake of you guys want to continue to read along. I think these proposals are too confusing. I think this is too much going on here. If you had to ask me which one is my favorite, I think the first one is the best one. I like the idea because I think that the key I think is to flatten the odds as much as possible, which is what I have said. It just cannot be a decision that teams are making that having higher odds is a better scenario than winning that game that night. Like, we need to remove that. Now, again, I would be aggressive. I would just put complete flat odds for every team that doesn't make the playoffs and every team that's in the play-in. That would be how I would do it. I'd say, listen, you all got, what would that be? I don't know, 6% or whatever that be. You all got 6% shot. There is no who got a better shot than anyone else. And then we just continue it from there. That's how I would do it. But this is, I think, the closest thing. Now, I mean, in terms of like something with these rules. Now, I said I put everybody in the lottery. I put all 30 teams in there. You all have a 3% chance. And just let chaos happen, right? That's how I would do this. But that's not what the NBA is going to do here. That's probably my favorite, though, of the ones. I like having the play-in teams in the lottery. I think that is crucial. You need to ensure that the play-in tournament still has meaning and has value, and teams want to actually be in the play-in tournament, because that's actually not the case right now. We saw the Dallas Mavericks essentially 2 years in a row kind of throw their, or not 2 years in a row, but twice in 3 or 4 years, basically throw their positioning in the play-in tournament. You know, last year's performance in the play-in tournament was so pathetic. It was like they were not even trying, which allowed them an opportunity to get a lottery pick that ended up being Cooper Flag, so that helped them a ton. In the 2 years prior, when they were in danger of losing their pick because it was a lottery-protected pick that was supposed to go to the New York Knicks if they made the playoffs, they essentially said, well, we want to keep our pick. We want to get in the lottery. So they threw several games at the end of the season in the hopes of keeping their draft pick. If you want to keep the play-in tournament thing to be a thing and teams to not make the decision of, I'd rather miss the playoffs than be in the play-in tournament and make the playoffs, then you have no choice but to include those teams in. So at the very least, it seems like they got that aspect right. Having 18 to 22 teams in the lottery, the more teams, the better. The flatter odds, the better. So those are the two big things for me. So I'm happy that you got, in that second proposal, I'm happy that you have more teams, that first proposal that I like. I'm happy that you have more teams. And I actually really like drawing all 18 picks. That's something I've also said too. Enough of this, we're only drawing, 4 picks and then you all just get slotted. Because what happens too is some teams are, all right, well, even if we're really bad, all right, well, if we land the 5, it matters. It's still important, more important for us to get a top 5 pick or top 6 pick than it is for us to, end up with, the 9th pick in the draft or the 10th pick because we won too many games. Like, you just need to take that off the board. So that's kind of why I actually like the idea that they're drawing for all 18 picks. Some people are concerned that, this means the Washington Wizards, might end up getting, the 18th pick in the draft. All right, then they get the 18th pick in the draft. Like, I don't think that the year that you have just at that point in time, especially for a lot of these bad teams, because these are teams that have been bad for years and years and years, I don't think that you are owed a high draft pick that exact next season. Like, if you get an 18th pick, the odds are you're probably going to be terrible again next year. So you had options. Either you could try to make some trades to improve your roster, or you say, all right, we got to just take this 18th pick. We're going to next year with better odds, and let's hope that next year we get a better bounce of the ball. But I saw someone, say this, and, actually it was someone on X, ironically. It was just a rando on X. But the most popular sport in the world is soccer / football. And while people have made the case, you should get rid of the draft lottery, they should just do it the NFL. The worst team gets the best picks, and that's it, which is just silly. The NFL gets away with that because there's only 17 games. If there was more games, because what ends up happening is with the NFL, it's not months and months and months of multiple games a week where teams are throwing games. That's not the case. Usually, we really only start really counting to the final weeks of the season, really. All right, who's got to lose to get a better draft pick, right? We're only doing this for, at most, maybe a month. We're not doing this for months and months and months, which is what happened in the NBA. So that to me is idiotic. You cannot just give the worst team the best picks. That's silly. Everybody would just lose to see if they can get the worst pick. You got teams literally throwing games. You kind of have now, but you'd have it even more egregious way than you have right now. But the most popular sport is football, and listen, there's punishment for if you suck. If you suck, there is no, okay, well, here's a way to help you get better. No, you get relegated. You're out of the league. If you suck in the EPL, the English Premier League, and you lose enough games, you gotta go to the second division. You gotta work your way back into the league. You're not like entitled to even play in the league, let alone in terms of these teams and people wanting these bad teams to get draft picks. Why? For what reason? They're not entitled to that. I don't think you're entitled to better luck improving your team through your own mismanagement via better odds in the draft lottery. I there was a time where I understood it, but once you have teams manipulating the system the way it is, now it's the system is fake. Like, people will say, oh, well, like the Wizards or like the some of these other teams, the Nets, like, oh, these teams, well, what do you do with those teams? Well, no, those teams are particularly bad on purpose. They've traded away good players. They have acquired young players. They've acquired G League guys. Like, they have put together rosters that are abominations on purpose so that they can get a high pick. They're trying to get rewarded for being bad, which is what they do not do in soccer. In soccer, you're as bad as the Nets and Wizards. You'll be playing in the Euro League or the G League. In terms of in the equivalent in soccer. That's what you would be doing. In the NBA, for some reason, people think that, oh, these teams should be rewarded for being terrible, even though they're trying to be terrible. Yes, there are some teams like Sacramento Kings that, they were trying to be good, and Vivek Ramadeve is just such a bad owner that, they still suck. But no, like, this system has been twisted so upside down and so out of place that we can't even look at this in face value and say, oh, well, the teams that are bad, like, well, we need to give them a bone for parity because, what happens if you're just bad by accident? Nobody's bad by accident. Teams are making calculated decisions to tank. And what I've said before, and I'll say again, the reason why I am for adding more teams to the lottery is the number one thing people will tell you, and teams will tell you, as to why they tank is because what's worse than being the worst team in the NBA? Being in the middle. Almost every NBA GM would tell you they would rather have the number one pick in the draft, in a loaded draft, or a draft at least with a franchise caliber player, than be the 8th seed in the playoffs, or be the 10th pick in the draft, or be a first round exit with no cap room, no saving grace coming over, no injured Tyrese Halliburton that's gonna come back next year. Like, no like parachute that's coming in to save you. Like, you're stuck with your roster, you're capped out, and that's it. They'd rather have the number one pick in the draft, because at the very least, at that point, you got a young, cheap player who could be your franchise guy that can get you over the top. It's a star-driven league. So what I like about increasing the teams in the lottery and adding and flattening the odds of the lottery is, if a team that's in the middle has built a pretty decent team, but just not a team that's not quite good enough to get to an NBA championship, it shouldn't be that their season is meaningless. And it shouldn't mean that they essentially have no way to really improve the team, except hoping either the guys they have magically get better, like the Detroit Pistons, though they have the number one pick in Kate Cunningham, or just riding it out for as long as they can, first round exits, before they decide, now we gotta just tear it down and rebuild. Like, in soccer, you wouldn't do that. Like, you wouldn't be, okay, we're the 7th best team in the EPL. Well, let's just trade all our best players and let's get really bad and then build this back. You would never, you'd say, all right, we got the foundation of something. Maybe we got to move a couple furniture here. Maybe we pay a couple guys here, but we're going to try our best to get up in the standings. We still have an opportunity here. And those seasons wouldn't be lost seasons. You would still feel like, okay, you're the Portland Trailblazers. All right, we snuck into the playoffs. Okay, we just missed the playoffs, losing in the play-in. But you know what? We had a pretty good season. Denny Avdia turned out to be an all-star caliber player. Shaden Sharp looks like he's going to be a future star. But damn it, we're still at least 2 or 3 pieces short. Maybe we're missing still a franchise guy. And you get the number one pick. It's like, oh, man, like Portland as a fan base and as a market becomes revitalized. Why is some place like Portland or some place like Orlando or some place like Charlotte, why are those markets and those teams, why are they not priorities in terms of getting them to be potential new contenders like the Jazz, the Jazz and the Nets and the Wizards are? I don't understand. I don't understand it. And I don't think there's anybody that can give me a good answer or good reasons for why seeing those teams potentially get a number one overall pick, or what package may come with the number one overall pick if they end up trading it, what that could mean for those franchises in terms of getting them to be now new contenders, adding new blood, adding new competitiveness near the top of the East or Western Conference. That's what we want, right? We want teams that have upward mobility. That is upward mobility. Upward mobility doesn't have to always begin at literally rock bottom. It could begin midway or one of these teams that's maybe not that good but still in the lottery. Like the Bulls got Derrick Rose, and that was one of the more shocking NBA draft lottery results, because I think at that time they had like the ninth worst odds. Like they were really low, and they flew all the way up. This was a team that actually made the playoffs the prior year. And they flew all the way up to get the number one pick in the draft, and it was great because okay, this is a team that they had they had Kirk Heinrich, they had they didn't have Boozer at the time, but they had, I guess they had Noah, right? They had Noah, they had Ben Wallace, that was a disaster, but like they had the modicum. Luol Deng was a good player. Like they had, this is a nice little team. Ben Gordon, they had a nice little team. It's like, this is a good little team. Like, they're not quite NBA championship ready. They're not a contender, but they're a good little team. It's too bad like they're not gonna win anything, but it's fun to have competitive Bulls basketball again, right? That's what a lot of people felt when they made that kind of out of nowhere playoff run the year prior. And then they injuries happen next year. They missed the playoffs, and it kind of seems like they're in no man's land. It's like, all right, this is a kind of a young team that's okay, but not a championship contender. Maybe if they're healthy, they get back to the playoffs. But what are the Bulls doing? They get Derrick Rose, and after his rookie year, they take the Celtics to 7 games, and then number one seed in the East 2 years in a row. Was that bad for the NBA that the Bulls, who were just in the playoffs a year prior, that they got Derrick Rose? That was one of the best stories in the NBA of that generation. That is one of the best stories in the NBA of that generation. A hometown kid coming home, wins the MVP, superstar player. It's a tragedy what happened to his career. That was great. Why don't we want more stories like that? So adding more teams into the lottery actually, I think, creates better opportunities also for those young players to come to the league and have success. Because how many of these teams that we see in the lottery that are drafted in 1, 2, 3, and 4, they're always there. They're consistently there. Like, you're going to just keep giving those teams picks over and over and over again. Maybe if we actually got some good teams getting those picks, again, we may have new stars, new dynasties, new contenders. That helps bring interest into the league. Not, let's drop the best talent to the worst team and let's pray that these idiots know how the hell to develop this guy, or this guy can overcome their ineptitude and become a great player. But you know what's also happening? Well, he's with an inept franchise that doesn't know what the hell they're doing. So then that guy's gonna want to leave in 6-7 years anyway. It's a silly thing. This chase for false parity. It's stupid. It's stupid. It doesn't make sense. I'm all for radical change for the draft lottery proposals. I just wish these were a little more straightforward. I just think as a fan, I think, and to be honest, maybe this is by design in the NBA. Maybe they think there is too much basically box score standings watchings for the worst teams, where you're simply looking at the standings and then running the tankathon to see how the odds were updated. Like, maybe they actually don't want people to be so invested in knowing where you are. Because I think if that'd be the only thing I would say is these rules, I was like, man, if I was a team in the lottery, that rule with the 2 seasons, I would have no idea where my team was. I don't know. I'll just wait until the season's over to read my beat reporter or read, it's not going to be Kevin Pelton anymore. Shout out to Kevin Pelton. I know he's got hired by an NBA team. But, read Zach Lowe or whatever. They'll have a whole breakdown of what the new lottery rules are and where my team is. I'll just wait for that because I good luck trying to figure that out. You're going to have to do literal math. You have to get a calculator out. So I think that's the only thing I don't love about it, is I think that you can probably do all these rules a lot more simply than what was described there. But I'm all for change. I'm all for radical change. And it seems like we're going to get it, which I think is a good day for the NBA. I want to talk some more NBA basketball here before we get to some football and get into some Supergirl stuff. I found these comments quite riveting from Mark Cuban. So Mark Cuban, he was on a podcast called Intersections, and he was talking about his time owning the Dallas Mavericks. He was very candid about a lot of different things. So I want to hear the first one, where he talked about he was asked essentially what happened and why he sold. He said, listen, essentially the business got too expensive. The business of owning an NBA team. He called himself a middle-class billionaire, I think is what he called himself, or middle-class owner, whatever he said. But he said the cost of being a middle-class billionaire or middle-class owner, it was not enough for me to continue to keep doing the owning an NBA team, the cost of it, and then also the emotional toll, because you live and die with this team and you want them to succeed, and if you make bad moves or if you don't do well, you become public enemy number one in your own community, where you're actually only trying to do good things for your community by trying to win. It's one of the things why he got out early, because he didn't want his kids who do want to get involved. He didn't want them to get involved. He didn't want them to get in the business. He didn't want them to take over the team, because he said that this is it's not a life he would wish for them. So, which I thought was quite interesting. So then, of course, when he said all that, though, they were like, all right, well, do you have any regrets? And he said this.
Do you have any regret?
I don't regret selling. I regret who I sold to. Yeah, I made a lot of mistakes in the process, and I'll leave it at that.
Oof. So he sold to Patrick Dumont, who's married into the Adelson family, and Patrick Dumont is the principal owner or governor of the Dallas Mavericks, and he was the owner that signed off on the Luka Doncic trade. And while it's kind of TBD where the Mavs go from here, the trade they made for Anthony Davis, I mean, they didn't get much there, so I don't know what to make of that. But we'll see what happens. They're in a complete rebuild mode. Maybe they'll get a lottery pick in this year's draft. Maybe they'll pair Cooper Flag with Cam Boozer, or pair him with Caleb Wilson or Darius Acuff, and maybe we got a whole new era in Dallas. But nonetheless, things aren't necessarily great there. Essentially, you're all just hoping on Cooper Flag becoming the next NBA superstar, which he might, because the kid can absolutely play. But Cuban being candid, they're saying that this didn't go the way I expected it to go. And if you guys remember, that's why it's been so weird. That's why the Luka Doncic trade was weird, because when Cuban sold the team to Patrick Dumont, the word was essentially he was still going to run the team. It was supposed to be, I'm selling the team, but like I'm still here. Like I'm going to be around. I still got I think he had like a 20-something% stake in the team, and he's still sitting there courtside almost every night. And he was still going to be, again, essentially the head of basketball operations. I don't know what happened. I don't know how, I don't know if Patrick Dumont told him, hey, just kidding, buddy, get out of here. I don't know what happened. I don't know why, considering he still has stake in the team, he couldn't have more say in basketball operations. But somehow he got boxed out of running his own team. I guess because it wasn't his own team anymore. But he gets boxed out, and now Nico Harrison is fully running the show. And we saw what Nico Harrison did once it was his full baby. He got Luka Doncic and traded him to the Los Angeles Lakers. And here's what I'll say about quickly before I get to the Nico Harrison part of it. I get why Cuban feels like he has to say this kind of stuff. But I think at a certain point, you just got to own it, man. Like, you, at the end of the day, I know it's very clear still. You can hear it in his voice. You'll hear it in the next comment, in the next clip. He still deeply cares about the Dallas Mavericks and deeply roots for their success. I think he still feels like it's still a part of him in many ways. And, I mean, he says he regrets it, so I guess that is him, I guess, in some ways taking accountability. But I just feel like he talks so much about this, about the team, about how it's being run, about how he would do things differently, that I think at a certain point, if you're a Dallas Maverick fan, I think it feels like he's trying to, I don't want to say weasel, because I don't think he's being a weasel, but it feels like he's trying to maneuver, is a better way to put it. Maneuver himself away from whatever it becomes the overarching viewpoint and the kind of verdict on the Patrick Dumont era of the Dallas Mavericks, which does not look great right now. He wants to kind of maneuver himself away from blame for that, because there are a lot of people in the Dallas community who blame Mark Cuban for where they are, because Mark Cuban, he said he couldn't afford it. Okay, that's fine. I'm not in his pockets. But he sells the team, and this is someone who said that he was going to still be invested, still be a part of the team, still run the team. And then, it feels like the fans got sold a bill of goods because he was no longer running the team. And all of a sudden, their superstar franchise player, face of the city, is gone. So it seems like when he says this kind of stuff, he's trying to play favor to that community to say, hey, listen, I know things are bad, but, trust me, I didn't want this to happen, and that's not what was supposed to happen. I think the community is smart enough to understand that Mark Cuban didn't want this to happen, but that doesn't mean he escapes the accountability for the ineptitude. And he does say he made mistakes, but again, to keep bringing this up in different ways, this was probably the most explicit way of him saying that those people shouldn't be running the team. Well, you put them in charge. At the end of the day, you put them in charge. You had an opportunity to sell to anybody you wanted. These people were saying, hey, we had a great vision to bring, a Dallas area casino to the downtown area with the arena there, with the team, and this is going to be awesome. And you bought into that vision. You just have to own it. And that's going to mean that there are going to be fans, despite what was a tremendous run of him as an NBA owner. Mark Cuban was an awesome NBA owner. Was he everybody's cup of tea? Because he was a little bit of a loudmouth and he would get involved in games and arguing with refs and he was a little bit arrogant, of course. But he was an awesome NBA owner. Every owner has mistakes, especially when you're almost also kind of being shadow GM, right? But every owner has mistakes. Jalen Brunson was a huge mistake. Steve Nash was a huge mistake, ironically, 2 point guards, right? Those are huge mistakes, letting those guys go. But he's won an NBA championship, only championship the Dallas Mavericks ever won. He took over a team that was dreadful, like, oh my God, bad when he took them over. They just came out of the Triple J era with Kidd and Jimmy Jackson and Jamal Mashburn, and it looked like they kind of had no direction. And they basically had 20 years of consistent playoffs, contending in the Western Conference. Awesome Dallas Mavericks basketball. I'm a Knicks fan, but the Dallas Mavericks became my second favorite team in the NBA, my Western Conference team during that era. I loved watching those Dallas Mavericks teams, so I got a lot of love for Mark Cuban because of that. While my Knicks were in the gutter, I was still able to at least be invested in some team in the NBA playoffs, and I love watching those Dirk era Dallas Maverick teams. Those were the teams that I rooted for back then as a kid. So I got a lot of love for Mark Cuban, and he's done a phenomenal job. But just like we could say that, we also can say, listen, on your way out, you sold us out to, for their words, I'm not saying it, you sold us out to an incompetent idiot. Like, you sold us out to a guy who didn't know what he was doing, who played you like a fiddle and thinking that you were going to run the team, which, why would there be any promise of that? And now we're stuck with this guy. And you have to take the blame for that. And he lives in Dallas. He still goes to the games. And I think for him, he talked about, again, like I said before, the fact that, when you're in the community, you try hard, and if things aren't going well, if he's not playing well, you become, persona non grata. I think that was him kind of giving it up right there, where he probably is living in the city and going to the games, and people are still giving him crap for the mistakes that happened with this team, because at the end of the day, he's the one that sold the team to Patrick Dumont. You just can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. So to keep doing interviews, keep talking about, I don't like how this is being done, and that shouldn't be done that way, and I shouldn't have done this, I should have done this or that. None of that stuff is going to absolve you from accountability for how bad the team is right now in the direction of the team. And none of that is going to change the fact that you put them in place. So I don't know if I need to keep hearing all of the dog ate my homework stuff with everything involving the Dumont family, and the Adelson family running this team, and how that sale went down. I appreciate honesty. I'm always welcome to honesty. So I don't hate these comments from that standpoint. I just think he's kind of been dancing around saying this kind of thing for a year now. And then finally now he's just being very explicit about it, probably because he very much is on the outside of everything happening with the team, so he doesn't feel like it really matters anymore. But I don't know at this point, okay, you regret it. If I was a Dallas Mavericks fan, I'd still be pissed off that you sold to this team. And you saying you regret it would give me no solace. It would make me not feel any better. I would still feel well, great, you feel regret. I feel regret having to every time turn on my TV screen watch Luka Doncic give another team 40 points. I have regret seeing Luka Doncic go and have another triple-double. I have regret seeing the Lakers going on to another NBA playoffs, and our team is going to be sitting our ass at home again. I don't know if it does anything for anybody. So I for his sake, I also wonder, I don't know if it's really worth it. And maybe he feels again, it's clearing his conscience, but I don't know why he's going to keep saying it. But this is another part of this I thought that was fascinating too. So here he was, and in my opinion, I think for the first time now, I follow, because again, I like the Mavs, and I root for them. They're the only team in the NBA I root for besides the Knicks. I haven't really rooted for them recently because there's been a lot of weird stuff with Brunson, Mavs, Cuban, Knicks having their pick, tanking allegations. I haven't really rooted for the Mavs in a long time because of a lot of the complications with the Knicks, to be honest. But I because though I've always followed the Mavs, I have followed a lot of this stuff. I have been kind of invested in this stuff, this conversation around the team. I don't remember ever hearing someone explicitly be like, Jason Kidd is also responsible for Luka Doncic being traded. But that is essentially what Mark Cuban says here.
But I think there was animosity between our former general manager and some people on Luka's team. His agent and some of the people that worked around them. I don't think they got along. I think there were issues that, J. Kidd had coached with Anthony Davis and was close to him, and Nico was close to AD, right? Since he was like 13 years old. And so I think, you talk about confirmation bias, there was some of that as well. But, that doesn't justify it for, our coach and our general manager to stand up and trade our best player.
That doesn't justify it for our coach and our general manager to stand up and trade our best player. He didn't say our general manager. He included Jason Kidd in that. And he mentioned Jason Kidd coached Anthony Davis. I don't think that's ever happened. Now, he may have played with Anthony Davis on an Olympic team, I think. I don't know where the overlap was with Kidd and Davis. I was trying to figure that out. Maybe he was an assistant coach on one of those teams. I don't know. Kidd was in the Olympics at one time. Davis has been in the Olympics. I don't know if that where the overlap was. But either way, man, you want to talk about making the job harder for the head coach who's currently still the head coach in Jason Kidd. That's pretty damning. Now, that's the first time I've heard Jason Kidd is he's kind of toed the company line, but really hasn't taken strong stances really for or against the trade since it happened. He's kind of just been like, this is the team we have. I'm confident in the team we have. And I'm a coach the team we have. And that's kind of it. This is the first time where he's essentially saying, oh, no, Kidd essentially, because of his experience with Anthony Davis, he felt comfortable with what they were going to do. And he said that it wasn't their right to hit him, Jason Kidd, to make a decision to trade their best player. I'm very fascinated if Jason Kidd will be asked about this. I don't know. I should look this up. Do the Mavs play tonight? Because if so, I'm curious if he would have been asked before or after the game. They do play tonight. They play a makeup game against the Bucks in Milwaukee, a former Jason Kidd stop where he coached briefly. I don't know. I haven't seen any comments as I'm doing the show live. I haven't seen any comments whether he has responded to these remarks from Mark Cuban, which again is very messy. He's still with the team in theory. He's still part of the organization. So here's a part of the organization essentially, taking a hatchet to you. Like that's crazy, I'm reading a quote here saying, remember when Kidd told us, I know what the F I'm doing. Yeah, I might have played that for you guys actually. This was during the 40 Days and 40 Nights run where Kidd was like going crazy. At least I knew I wanted to play it. I don't know if I got to play it. But Kidd just took a blowtorch to the media because, Cooper Flag started playing well. And they're like, hey, people were questioning your coaching Cooper Flag because you started playing him point guard at the start of the year. And it was weird. But now he's playing well. So maybe he deserves some credit. He was like, yeah, I know what the F I'm doing. You guys are idiots, essentially, was what he said. And I'm not much, a small exaggeration, but not much. He didn't call them idiots, but he did say, I know what the F I'm doing. He was tired of the criticism. So is that a coach who's starting to feel a little bit of the heat of him with this decision, not just the development of Cooper Flag that now has to work because this is essentially your get out of jail free card for the trade for Luka Doncic, but also having some kind of role in the Luka Doncic trade? This would be all new news to me. But either way, I think that Jason Kidd is probably going to be a dead man walking for whoever gets hired by the next general manager. And maybe that's why Cuban knows that. Or maybe Cuban wants to make it harder for Jason Kidd to remain as head coach for whoever the next general manager is, because he's basically putting it out there. Hey, fans, you guys are giving all your heat to Nico Harrison. You also be giving heat to Jason Kidd because he was 100% for making that trade for Luka Doncic. And I will say one thing about this before we move on. because again, it makes me wonder, why is this happening? Why is this being said? I mentioned at the top that this was supposed to still be Mark Cuban's show. Mark Cuban was still supposed to be running basketball operations until we don't ever get word. And I'm sure it'll be in a book or some kind of awesome expose by somebody writing it, like, or, I don't know, Wright Thompson or something like that. But like, we still don't get word on how he got boxed out. Like, was he just showing up to work and then they're like, hey buddy, like, this meeting is without you? Like, I want to know, like, what happened when he was running. Like, I'm sure he still has meetings with the team, meetings with the general manager. Were they just not listening to him? Were they just not inviting him and stuff? Like, how did it go from him running the team to him not running the team? That's the question I can't figure out. But the one thing about Jason Kidd, and this has been a part of his professional life, is he has had a reputation of not necessarily being the most loyal guy. Whether that's him to argue that he is loyal or not loyal, that's not for me to say. That is his reputation. That is fact. I'm not making that up. He essentially, tried to make a coup in Brooklyn to run the team and get Billy King fired. That didn't work, so that's why he ended up with the Milwaukee Bucks. And there was word that he he basically knew the Bucks owner, and he tried to leverage his relationship with the Bucks owner against the Nets. It was a very bizarre situation. He has gotten several coaches, including Byron Scott, fired. Jason Kidd has had a reputation of being a coach killer and a backstabber. Does Mark Cuban feel like his former head coach, backstabbed him? Is that why he's doing this? Like, does he feel like somehow Kidd had a say in Cuban no longer having a say in basketball operations, and that's why Cuban's saying, "Okay, you guys felt that way about me. All right, I'm gonna let this out the chamber. Let's see how the fans feel when they know that you also were responsible for Luka being traded." Because again, Cuban, I think, kind of giving a little bit of a truth serum comment by saying that, when things are going bad, you become public enemy number one, and people hate you. Everybody hates you. I wonder if he feels like he gets a lot of crap, even though he had nothing to do with the trade. He gets a lot of crap simply because he like picked the people who ran the team who made the trade. I wonder if he's saying, hey, I'm getting all this crap. Like, that guy's still coaching the team, and he wanted the trade to happen, and he vouched for it. He was the one that actually had to say. He could have stopped it in theory, or at least said, hey, buddy, Nico, this is a bad idea. He didn't do it. He's getting away scot-free. Kid's getting a lot of criticism and a bunch of other stuff. Team sucks. And people just think that he's not doing a good job. But maybe he's not getting so much heat for that. I wonder if this is Cuban saying, hey, before you start coming at me again about all this stuff, go ask Jason Kidd what his role was in that. And I wonder if some of that comes from his role being boxed out of the organization. Just my 2 cents on what could be going on there with the Kidd comments, or rather Cuban comments about Jason Kidd implicating him in the Luka Doncic trade. I love the word implicating, as if this is like some scandal. It is a scandal, but even the user implications imply some kind of malfeasance. It was just a basketball transaction, but it's become so egregious. That's the only word I can use to talk about it. Great news. Oh, actually, before I get to great news, I want to get to some not so great news. It's better to end with not so great news better to begin with, end with good news than end with not so great news. So let's talk about Jaden Ivey real quick. I'm only going to do a quick drive-by on him. But Jaden Ivey, he was waived by the Chicago Bulls. He had been, first of all, he's kind of had a rough go. He has made comments within the last year that have been quite disturbing and concerning. Comments about him not feeling like he's the same player anymore, feeling like he doesn't have confidence. I saw a video of him talking about things that he may have dealt with as a kid that are still bothering him. He mentioned some sexual abuse allegations against him. So it seems like he's a young man that is gone through a lot potentially and is dealing with a lot right now. And he was obviously traded by the Detroit Pistons. There was actually some hope coming into this year that, as a Knicks fan, I heard a ton. They were like, hey, you guys got lucky last year that we had to play that series against you guys without Jaden Ivey. He was the number 4 pick in the draft. He was an instrumental piece to the Detroit Pistons, and then he got hurt and he was out for the season. And they ended up being really good without him. maybe some people thought they were kind of winning maybe in spite of him before, who knows? But nonetheless, there was kind of a conversation saying, hey, like, you know, when he comes back, like, oh man, the Pistons are going to be very good when he comes back. And it actually turned out that he returned to the team and he didn't fit at all. And he really didn't play all that well with this Pistons team as it was, as it stood, as it currently is, where they're one of the best teams in the NBA. So he ended up being kind of the odd man out. Again, he spoke about a lot of confidence, lack of trust in his health, lack of trust in his game, not feeling like he's the old Jaden Ivey anymore. They were actually quite sad when I remember when he said it and it came up. And I'm someone who was super high on him in the draft. I just felt like essentially, for lack of a better term, what you've seen from like Donovan Mitchell is kind of who I thought Jaden Ivey could be, and just a freakish, athletic downhill guard who can also shoot the ball, who would be able to really flip games with his speed and athleticism. I really thought he was going to be a star, and a lot of people did, but it did not work out really quite. Detroit didn't have great coaching, it seemed like, for a while. There were Monty Williams and others. And it didn't seem to ever fall in favor with JB Bickerstaff, and then he got hurt, and then he was really out of favor, and that was it. Goes to the Bulls, only plays 4 games, doesn't really do much there, and again there was then the behavior started recently in the last week or so, started to become a little more bizarre because before he sounded like someone who, quite frankly, I'm not a psychiatrist, so don't tell me I am. But he sounded like someone dealing with some emotional issues and perhaps maybe some depression. That's just my armchair, not a psychologist, but some things he was saying. This is taking a little bit of a weirder turn, where he is, he says he identifies as a devout Christian, and in the last few weeks or so, he's been, especially in the last days, he's been going on these rants on Instagram, whether it's been Instagram Live or Instagram just itself, posting videos where he's going on these 40, 50-minute rants talking about, again, like, people preach and they preach to the gospel, and that's all within their right, and more power to them, especially if they're doing it responsibly. I got none but love for that, to be honest. But the way he was talking about becoming a born-again Christian, it was starting to become a little concerning, just given how cruel he was speaking about the people who were, even some people even trying to congratulate him or talk about, hey, I'm a born-again Christian or whatever. He started talking a lot about people not being righteous and people doing the wrong things and basketball not mattering, and it was a lot of judgment coming from him for a lot of the things he was saying. And then he seemed to maybe, touch the third rail where, it was yesterday's post when he said essentially that the NBA, because it has a Pride Night and, supports LGBTQ causes, that the NBA is not a righteous league. And then he also spoke about Stephen Curry, who's also a devout Christian, and said that, I don't even know why I can't remember why he said Stephen Curry wasn't a Christian, but basically it was like, Stephen Curry is not a righteous Christian. He's not it was strange. Christianity, not Christianity, could have been any religion. What he was saying was strange. I think just because of how forceful he was with his judgment. There was seemingly no chance of acceptance, chance of love, no hope for people. It seemed to be a lot of like, you're all damned to death, you're all damned to hell. And obviously the stuff with the LGBTQ community and, damning the NBA for having a Pride Night and taking money for LGBTQ causes or supporting LGBTQ causes, that was enough for the Chicago Bulls. So they waived Jaden Ivey. All I'll say is this, man. Number one, I think that he's someone that doesn't need basketball right now. So there's an argument to be made, like, hey, like, should a team be trying to support him through something like this? Like, should they be saying, hey, you're suspended, or hey, you're on the medical leave while you figure your stuff out? I could certainly hear that case. But at the end of the day, you're accountable for your words, right? You're accountable for representing the organization and representing your community, in the community of Chicago, wherever you play. It's a privilege, not a right, to be in the NBA, regardless of your beliefs. And he has a responsibility. And Mace, the rapper Mace, who is a pastor and obviously retired from rap, to become a pastor and become a born again Christian. So I really appreciated his commentary on It Is What It Is, a show he does with Cameron, the rapper. But he was like, essentially, you play in the NBA. Like, that is your job. That if you want to do that, then are you the righteous person in doing that? Like, because he's saying the NBA is not righteous. Well, this is where you play. And if you want to be so-called righteous, then you can't play in the NBA and have these views. Like, if you're going to, is essentially saying, are you really going to stand on business for your beliefs? If you feel this way, because, there will be some who maybe will say Jaden Ivey is being railroaded for his own beliefs. He is essentially saying that the NBA is not a place for righteous people. He identifies himself as someone who is now righteous because he's a born-again Christian. If that is the case, again, more power to him, and I wish him nothing but the best. And I hope, again, because of some of the other stuff he was talking about, I hope that he's okay. I really do. That's why I'm trying to take a very serious and responsible tone with this. But if that's the case, you're not obligated to be a basketball player in the NBA. The NBA has already made a decision long ago that it supports LGBTQ rights. It supports having Pride Nights to highlight its LGBT communities in various different cities in the U.S. If you think that is somehow an unrighteous cause, that's fine, but then go become a pastor, go start your own basketball league that doesn't support Pride Nights or whatever. Like, that is all your prerogative. But I do think that this idea that, you should be able to just say what you want and there's no consequences when, who knows what people are part of the Bulls organization who maybe identify with the LGBT community or are allies of the LGBT community. Or even, and this is a reality too, and I'm someone who identifies as a non-denominational Christian. I'm more of a faithful person, spiritual person than like a real faithful, like a religious person per se. More spiritual than religious, that's what I would say. A more spiritual person than maybe a religious person. But like, the league is not a Christian league. Like, it's not like, so you're pushing this person is not righteous. You're saying all these fans are not righteous. These are people who pay your checks. These are people who support the team, support you as an athlete. Again, that's the path you want to take. If you want to take a different path, then you got to go ahead and do that. But I think that people shouldn't just be open to being offended and being, damned to hell because these are your beliefs. Those could be your beliefs. I don't care what you believe. But there's consequences with that. The Bulls have to answer for that. The city of, the NBA has to answer for that. And they don't support that. So then he has to go. I do hope he's doing okay. I saw he did another live where he said his wife's not talking to him. I learned today he has 2 young kids, which also makes this very concerning to me. They're very young. Looks like they were maybe, like his wife is a former volleyball player. Looks like at Purdue. These kids look like they might be 4 and 2. I mean, he's a young guy, obviously. These are not older kids. Not that it would matter, but this is someone who's a new father as well. If he does need help, if that is what is happening, I certainly hope he gets it. I hope that the NBA, he gets waived by the Bulls. Okay, he's no longer playing. I hope the NBA doesn't throw this young man away. I hope that they try to support him in any way they can behind the scenes. If counseling is needed, if simply just a talking to is needed. I hope they support him in some way, because I actually thought Billy Donovan's comments were interesting. He said that, I oftentimes struggle with wondering if we have enough support for our players when it comes to mental health and things like that. Because this is a large and fast life that we live. We're going city to city, game to game. And, it's a tough thing to do when you have someone who steps so out of line, but also may be dealing with a mental health crisis. And again, this is speculation. There's nothing I don't want to diagnose him or say this is what's happening, but this is just from the outside. Someone potentially dealing with a mental health crisis, but because they're crashing out in a way that is detrimental to the league and to the organization, you could no longer have that person be a part of your organization. What do you do? What do you do at that point? It's a very tough situation to be in, but that is where they're at. Again, I'm sending as much support and hope for Jaden Ivey that he can, get out of whatever issues he's dealing with, if he is dealing with issues. If he says he's fine and this is just what he believes, then I wish him all the best in whatever his next, path in life is. But it's not going to be in the NBA. You simply can't. disrespect people and tell them that they're gonna go to hell and that they're not righteous and whatever, because these are your beliefs. These are the people that pay your, Base said, these people that pay your checks, these people that support you as a player, as an organization, and that's just the reality of it. But sad situation going on. This is a guy who looked like he could be a future NBA star, and right now he is no longer in the NBA. Shifting gears here on a much more lighter note, I do want to give a major shout out and give a round of applause. We have some new Hall of Fame people who have now been voted. So this will be the new class. This will be the class of 2026. So you'll have among them Amari Stoudemire, former Suns and Knicks star; Candace Parker, former WNBA star for the Sparks, Chicago Sky, Las Vegas Aces; Elena Delle Donne, former star of the Washington Mystics; NBA head coach Doc Rivers; and Gonzaga basketball head coach Mark Few. Awesome. Congrats to these people. Give them another round of applause. All deserving. It's crazy. Like, you realize you get older. And I think probably older fans probably know this too, and they've probably felt it for various different athletes. But when the people that you saw their whole careers start going into the Hall of Fame, you start to realize, oh snap, I am like getting old. I am like an adult now. Like, this is crazy. Like, I remember when Amari Stoudemire got drafted. We were talking about it on Westwood One Sports a couple days ago. I remember when Amari Stoudemire, as a rookie, got that bounce pass on a pick and roll from Stephon Marbury and did one of the nastiest in-game dunks you'll ever see on Michael Olowokandi, and Stephon Marbury had the steak face. Oh my god! Like, I remember that as an 18-year-old straight out of high school rookie, Amari Stoudemire. Like, I remember that, and now I'm here doing commentary on him being voted into the Hall of Fame. That is crazy. I remember when Candace Parker, I believe she won Pat Summitt's last national championship at Tennessee. I remember when she was there. I remember when she was kind of the so-called next chosen one. I say so-called not in a disrespectful way, because I know that was a conversation with J. Cole talking about Jay-Z. But I'm just saying, it's like one of the, the next chosen ones in women's basketball, and her living up to the hype at Tennessee, living up to the hype as a WNBA MVP, Rookie of the Year, multiple-time WNBA champion, star. I remember Elena Delle Donne's incredible story. Someone who was supposed to play basketball at UConn and got burned out because she was tired of playing basketball and went to play volleyball at Delaware, seemingly throwing away a lucrative career playing basketball, only to find her love for basketball again at the University of Delaware, taking them to the NCAA tournament, becoming a superstar at Delaware, and then becoming a WNBA champion in the WNBA for the Washington Mystics. And of course, we all love Doc Rivers, the spin doctor, as we called him on the Maggie and Perloff show. I remember when he first became the Orlando Magic head coach after being a broadcaster, and seeing him have his triumphs as a head coach, winning an NBA championship with the Boston Celtics. But, of course, he did have those 3-1 losses with most of the teams he coached, right? We saw it definitely with the Clippers and with the Sixers. Of course, he did it with the Magic as well. And but to see him go from being a rookie coach who was just figuring it out to now a Hall of Famer is crazy. And then I'm going to give a solo round of applause to my guy, Mark Few. And people who watch me and follow me enough know how much I love college basketball, how much I love Mark Few. Listen, I'm very critical because I want to see the team win a championship so damn bad. And that is what Mark Few wants. Like, he was actually, my brother Kenneth was telling me how he was on the field 68 and I was talking about what it meant to win a first round game. And he said nothing. He was like, we're trying to win championships. Like, I don't care. Or maybe it was about making the tournament. That's maybe what it was. And he was like, nothing? What it means? Nothing. We expect to make the tournament. Our expectation is to try to win that championship, get to the Final Four. And so I've seen where the program has come. So my a lot of times, maybe what you see from me on social media is me often criticizing Few and like, oh, we shouldn't have lost this game, the one of the 3 or 4 games they lose every year. But I mean, the joy that Mark Few has brought me as a college basketball fan, rooting for the Gonzaga Bulldogs, and to me, they are the ultimate Cinderella. They have the Cinderella where the clock never struck midnight, which is still never happened. Almost every, Cinderella we've seen, eventually the clock has struck midnight on them and they have gone back to whatever mid-major or mid-program that they've been. That's not what Gonzaga was. Started with him as an assistant with Dave Monson when they went all the way to the Elite Eight. Then he takes over next year. They get back to another Sweet 16, and he takes over the program in 2000, and they essentially dominate the West Coast Conference. They become a national power. They become a national brand. That just does not happen. A team that's a mid-major team from a small conference, a little small Jesuit school in Spokane, Washington, and you turn them into, they had not won a title. So I know that's the thing on his resume that he's going to still fight like hell. Seems like he's coming back next year to see if he can get. But to be up there with the Dukes and the Carolinas and the Kentuckys and the Arizonas and all these other programs that you consider power programs, Gonzaga has been a power program. The only thing they've missed is not winning a title, but they've been a power program for that entire time, or at least definitely in the more recent years. And they've been a winner that entire time. What Few has done is one of the greatest college basketball success stories of all time. And I really hope, I'm a fan, so I feel comfortable saying this. I really hope they can win a championship, because if they do win a championship, outside of maybe Texas Southern, Texas Western winning a championship with a starting 5 of all black players, you could argue that this is the greatest story in the history of college basketball. That a team could be a mid-major team and work his way up to being a actual national power and winning a national championship. Again, it's never been done. There have been teams that have even won national championships, maybe for the mid-majors, like a San Francisco or things like that with Bill Russell. But then, again, they go back to just being like San Francisco, or like a UNLV. That's not really a mid-major, but you know what I mean. UNLV or some of these teams, they were powerhouse teams for a short time, but then eventually they go back to being kind of a mid-team or whatever. That's not what happened with Gonzaga. It's been just a parachute for 25 years, just going up, 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 and up. That's so rare. So yeah, I'm hoping he gets it done, but he's so deserving of going to the Hall of Fame. So I'm really happy for Coach Few and happy for the Gonzaga program. I'm a little mad that Shams didn't have this in his tweet. Like, he had the other 4, and then he didn't have Mark Few. But shout out to Matt Norlander. He got the exclusive on that for CBS Sports. He's the one that was able to break the news that Mark Few also will be joining this class of Hall of Famers. So before we get out of here, man, I wanted to mention just a couple more things. The Jets coach, Aaron Glenn, I don't know why he does this. I don't know why it gives me a little concern, because it makes me wonder if he's still not quite gotten it when it comes to how to talk to the media. I probably would prefer this version than the Parcells cosplay we got last year. But now we're kind of getting maybe the Rex Ryan version of Aaron Glenn. So the coaching meetings and the owner meetings are happening this week. So you got all these media members that are down. I don't know where they're actually. Usually they're somewhere warm, Florida, Arizona, a place like that. But they're somewhere warm. Meeting up. Rules are getting passed. Competition committees are happening. Big things are happening in the NFL. Maybe some deals are being worked out potentially. Maybe some trades that will then happen during the draft. This is a big week in the NFL. So everybody's down there, including the New York Jets. And it was said over the weekend, Aaron Glenn had told NFL Network, because some people were pointing out that there was not a definitive statement from either Darren Muji or Aaron Glenn that Geno Smith was the starting quarterback for the Jets. I had no reason to think that he wouldn't be, but I guess it was a good find by the people who were eagle-eyed and eagle-eared enough to be like, hey, listen, we haven't heard that Geno Smith is actually the QB. So is he the QB? Is there someone that may come in, or is there a potential rookie that may come in and start? Like, what's going on? So he told NFL Network, hey, he's definitely going to be our starter week 1. So, okay, that put that away. And it was probably good to clear that up. I'm glad that he did. But then he's in the gaggle today talking to the media. And again, first, starts off okay. He talks about Geno Smith and the fact that he actually had a little bit of a rough year, maybe has a lot to prove, maybe good for the Jets this year.
Something about a quarterback, and I'm going to say a quarterback with a chip on his shoulder. And listen, he's proven a lot in this league of what he's done, especially when you take those times when he was in Seattle. Listen, he fits exactly what we're trying to do. So obviously we've created an identity. The foundation of our offense is pretty good now.
So I was like, okay. I mean, again, and I think I agree. I think a quarterback chip on the shoulder, like, that can't hurt for sure. People have been writing Geno off. He's hoping to write back again, not write back for a second time in his career now. So I get that part of it. The offense foundation is pretty good. I guess line's okay. You still got Breece Hall. He's not going nowhere. Hopefully he doesn't hold out. You got Gary Wilson. You don't really have any other receivers, so that's a little bit of a problem. I like Mason Taylor, the tight end that they drafted last year. Pretty good. Okay, I guess I can go pretty good. I'd probably go average to below average, but okay, sure. But that statement, not crazy. Fine, understand that. This is the statement where you sit back and you see the lower third there in terms of what he said, and you scratch your head when it comes to what his expectations are for Geno Smith.
Like, I just feel like he's the guy that's going to lead us to the promised land. He's the guy that's going to touch the ball more than anybody else on offense. And listen, I know he had his struggles, and I think a lot of quarterbacks, they have their struggles. If you look at over the last 5 years, the guy that's thrown the most interception. I mean, the top guys are up there.
Lead us to the promised land.
Like, I just feel like he's the guy that's going to lead us to the promised land. He's the guy.
What?
Like, I just feel like he's the guy that's going to lead us to the promised land.
What? I mean, come on, Aaron Glenn. Like, this is so ridiculous that I kind of hope nobody really takes this seriously. Because this could just be your typical... This is the kind of thing that you should be... This is the kind of thing you tell your team. Like, this is the thing you tell your team in the locker room. You tell Geno Smith. Like, you tell your individual coaches. Like, you want to have that kind of confidence and that sense of belief. In order to succeed in the NFL, you have to have an unshakable level of confidence and belief in what you are doing, which I believe Aaron Glenn has. I think he's a realist, but I think you can't go in thinking I'm going to be the worst. Otherwise, I mean, you're dead on arrival, right? So, and for his sake, he wants to keep his job. He definitely can't come in thinking that. So, I actually don't even have a problem with him thinking this. But you have to read the room and read where you are in the NFL landscape, Aaron Glenn. It is absolutely absurd to say a quarterback who led the Raiders to 2 wins last year, who you got off of the scrap heap, is going to take your Jet team that had only 3 wins last year and is going to take them, quote unquote, to the promised land. Like, he's going to take you to the Super Bowl? I mean, what are we doing? Well, what are we doing? It puts now, again, it shouldn't put pressure, because I think if people had a brain, you'd be like, this is ridiculous. I'm not even going to entertain this. But now this is just a bulletin board kind of thing that just now hangs around. It's a receipt that now is going to be out there that Aaron Glenn said the Jets are going to go to the Super Bowl. He believes that Geno Smith is going to take him to the Super Bowl. Now there's this receipt that's hanging out there that he's going to have to answer for, that Moody's going to have to answer for, that your crazy owner, Woody Johnson's going to have to answer for, the Mad King, and eventually the rest of the players, and just a receipt that other teams now will play up when they play the Jets, or they'll mention as a little bit of a jab when they want to jab the Jets about, hey, remember when they said that Geno was going to take them to the promised land? Ha, idiots. Like, just that's not the form. That's not the form to say that. Just like last year, it wasn't the form to decide that you were going to go World War I or World War III against all the media for asking you simple questions, and I'm doing this because I don't want to. I'm not telling you because I don't want to, and doing all this nonsense. Like, this is the kind of stuff where, again, it makes me wonder if Aaron Glenn really has grown as an NFL head coach in terms of the stuff that goes beyond just the X's and O's. You got to try to limit distractions in the offseason. You got to try to limit headlines in the offseason. You want to come in, real G's moving silence like lasagna. Shout out to Lil Wayne. You want to move like a real G, which is in silence. You had a awful year, not just as a team, but you individually as a head coach. You were terrible. I don't need to hear anything from you other than we're working hard, we're trying to get this thing right, and we're not putting expectations on it, but we're going day by day trying to get better every day. That's all I got to hear from you. And the great coaches, even the ones that have won championships, you hear them say that kind of stuff. You hear the Sean McVays, the Andy Reeds, now the Mike McDonalds, who now puts himself in that class after winning the Super Bowl. The Mike Vrabels. Like, you don't hear them saying stuff like this quarterback's going to take us to the promised land. And they damn sure aren't saying it with a journeyman guy who led the league in interceptions last year and led the Raiders to 14 losses. Like, it just only presents the same old Jets that you said was not happening. Again, not something you had to say either. But, that was opening press conference, and maybe you want to, kind of get the fans riled up. Okay, fine. But again, like that's why you don't say stuff like that. Because then if you're not able to live up to it, then you have to answer for that. And the team has to answer for that. And people who then get their hopes up because they're looking to you for leadership and guidance, fans and support staff and the people around the community, of the Jet community, and they hear stuff like this. And if Geno Smith goes out and he has another terrible season, the Jets have another terrible season, it just adds to the misery, man. Like, this was just like an unnecessary headline. I'm like, how are the Jets making headlines without it being about drafting the number 2 pick in the draft? That's the only headlines they should be making. But here you had Aaron Glenn today. I just thought making a completely ill-advised comment that was just unnecessary. All you have to say is that we believe Geno Smith is a great fit for our team, and we think he's going to play good football next year, and we ought to be a much better team. That is, why can't you say that? Like, I don't work in the NFL. I'm not an NFL head coach. And I gave you exactly the perfect answer for how to avoid creating, Dove Kleinman headlines and him rage baiting NFL fans and Jets fans with him not pulling the clip. Hey, you see that Aaron Glenn said that the Jets are going to go to the Super Bowl now? That's all on you. You said that. Like, that's the kind of thing usually you're trying to tell your players to avoid. Hey, let's avoid making headlines this week. Let's avoid creating distractions. You're making the headlines and creating the distractions by saying comments that are so far-fetched and so high-attaining and unattainable that it's only going to become a receipt for this season moving forward that we're going to have to come back to. I'm going to have to take a caller, I'm going to take Brian and Syasset, or Joe and Islip, West Islip, on a Sunday morning, getting ready for another Jets loss, and them saying, remember when Aaron Glenn said that the Jets, Geno's going to take us to the promised land? Now we all got to deal with this. Like, this shouldn't be part of the conversation. This shouldn't be a part of the story. But this is where we're at now, because you said this. And again, it makes me wonder if you've actually grown from last year. Did you learn from last year? It wasn't just how bad you were in games and bad you were in preparation. You also handled the media aspect of it poorly. You created unnecessary headlines constantly. You created embarrassing moments way too often. And now here we are again. Another unnecessary headline that is only going to be used to LOL Jets again. And it's coming from the head coach. Like, what are we doing, man? What are we doing? All right, last thing before we get out of here. It's been a fun show. 40 days and counting. It's your boy, EJ Stewart. Streaming live on YouTube, New Generation Media. Streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. And streaming live on Instagram, Action EJ. Shout out to my guy, Alex. Producer, board op at WFAN. He joined the live stream a little bit earlier via IG Live. So shout out to him. Again, if you like this show, be sure to check out all of our shows on New Generation Media. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. This week, very special, I launched, which I announced last Friday, Orange and Blue Bloods, the Knicks podcast that I hosted with Tommy Beer for Odyssey and WFAN. It's back. It's back. If you subscribe to the stream before, or to the feed rather before, you should have seen a new episode come up today. You're probably like, what the hell? There hasn't been a new episode in 2-3 years. Well, the show is back. I mentioned that Odyssey gave me back power of the stream. So it's no longer an Odyssey produced show. It's an EJ produced show. But it will be coming out twice a week. Again, Monday and Wednesday is the expected timetable in terms of when I'll be dropping episodes. So if you want to check that out, you can, of course, go over to the Orange and Blue Bloods podcast feed. That's where you can get all your Orange and Blue Bloods episodes. Just search Orange and Blue Bloods wherever you get your podcast, and make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you give us a 5-star review. All those things are helpful. And the videos of those episodes, because again, this is not Odyssey produced, the videos will now live on New Generation Media, at least for now. So New Generation Media is where you'll find the Orange and Blue Bloods full video episodes if you want to watch the video episodes. At least that's where we're doing it right now. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media, and make sure you check out my first episode of Orange and Blue Bloods. Just search Orange and Blue Bloods wherever you get your podcasts. Finally here, before we get out of here, I thought that the Supergirl trailer that DC dropped today was really dope. This was the second trailer that they dropped. This one, a lot more detail, a lot more story. And as I've said a ton, this is a story that is essentially is an adaptation of a comic book that was written at this point about, I want to say maybe about 10 years ago, from the great Tom King, comic book writer. He wrote this story, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, this kind of like short 8-issue run of Supergirl telling a specific story. And I finished it, actually. I just finished reading it last week. It's a very good story. Unconventional in many different ways, and I think if you watch the first Superman movie and you got introduced to this version of Supergirl, you automatically feel like this feels a little unconventional. Story is unconventional as well in terms of how it's told and linear storytelling and all those different things, and timeline and how they play with it, and space travel. But it's a good story. It's a fun story, and this trailer to me really drove home that comic book being like the adaptation. Like, this was a movie that was originally titled Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow before it just became Supergirl, and I kind of wish that they would keep some of those subtitles. I don't know why they did it with Superman. Well, it was Superman something else, and then it just became Superman. And this one, it was Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, and then it became Supergirl. Obviously, we have Man of Tomorrow coming out next year, but I'm sure that's going to be changed to just Superman or whatever. I kind of like they just keep those subtitles as it is. I kind of like those titles, but nonetheless, this trailer was really good. Really spoke to a lot of the plot of this movie. So you get to see kind of Supergirl, traveling planet to planet, kind of partying, and we see a lot of that being a symptom of her trying to cope with the loss of Krypton, the loss of her family, and loss of everybody she knows. And what you see a little bit from the trailer, what you'll see from the movie, is her experience is a lot different than Kal-El's experience, Clark's experience. Because, Kal-El was a baby. He doesn't remember anything about Krypton. All he remembers is whatever is told to him by his, AI parents, and whatever videos or records he has, or the robots he has. And he can look up the data, look up information. He can learn about his heritage, but he doesn't remember it because he was too young. Kara was a teenager, or a young girl. She was of age to remember Krypton, have friends, have family members she loved, and remember all that. And she saw it wiped away. And what you'll see from the Woman of Tomorrow telling of the story and the Woman of Tomorrow origins of Krypton's destruction, her experience is a little more heartbreaking, because it wasn't like she saw, oh God, Krypton blew up, but I flew out and that was it. There's a lot more that happens with some people actually surviving and them trying to piece together what they have left, the little bit they have left, and that going terribly. I don't want to get into spoilers, because I don't want to tell you too much if you don't want to know anything about this movie. But, and it's in the trailer, but like maybe you're seeing the trailer, you don't know what's going on. I don't want to give you too much. There's some clues there for what's going on. But her experience is different. You see that in the trailer. You see her being in the pod. Now she looks like she's a teenager, being sent away. You see her, grieving her mother, grieving other Kryptonians who have been killed. So it wasn't like, Krypton just exploded and that was it. Like, she lives with this grief in a different way. And the movie certainly presents, the partying, the drinking as kind of her coping with that. She's traveling from, planet to planet, trying to get drunk at red suns, because that's where she can, have her abilities be dampened when she's under a red sun as opposed to a yellow sun. But then you also see kind of the little bit of the plot of this movie come together too. We see Clem from the Yellow Hills. He's the villain of this movie. He's not someone that's going to be super familiar as like a Superman or Krypton villain that you would know. He's really only from this story. You'll get to know him well, but he essentially, we see him kill the father of the young girl, who befriends Supergirl, and they go on a trip to try to get him, because we see in the trailer he actually ends up hurting Crypto. Crypto gets hurt in the trailer, and the girl tells Ruthie, it's a girl, young girl. She tells Supergirl that hey, Clem is the only one that has the antidote. So that in order to save Crypto, you got to get the antidote. So this becomes kind of a race to get to Clem to take him out, because you just killed this girl's dad, and you also almost, or maybe you killed Crypto, but also maybe to get this antidote to see if you can save Crypto's life. And that essentially is a lot of this story. There's going to be some fun in between. We see Jason Momoa's Lobo in a much more substantial version this time. Although we saw him a little bit in the first trailer too. But here you see him a little bit of action. You see a little bit of the dialogue between him and Millie Alcock's Supergirl. Looks great. Sounds great. It's a Lobo feel. I can't wait to see more. Action in this movie looks pretty good. That was probably the one thing that was really missing from the first trailer. This one was a lot more action-packed. This one was a lot more emotional. I thought this was a great trailer. I'm already in hook, line, and sinker. I like the comic book. I like this version of Supergirl they introduced. So I was already in. I loved this first Superman movie. So I was already in. I think if you were on the fence, I think this is a trailer that probably would say, okay, I like what they did here. I may take a look at this. I thought they did a really good job with this one. I'm really excited for Supergirl. That movie comes out June 26th. June 26th is when Supergirl comes out. Again, starring Millie Alcock as Kara Zor-El, a.k.a. Supergirl. Jason Momoa is Lobo. Eve Ridley is the young girl Ruthie that you see there. And we saw Superman in this trailer too. And we see Superman in this trailer. He's giving a message to Kara, and he's like, I'm worried about you. I'm worried that you're thinking about your people. And I think when in the comment I think he kind of meant the people of Earth, maybe her Earth parents, things like that. But I think she's probably, when she says, she's like, I can never forget my people, and she's still thinking about Krypton, right? It's gonna be a story about grief and how to manage grief. And again, because I know the book, I don't want to say any more to say like kind of how everything checks out. But it's a really well written story. At least the book was. I'm really hoping the movie pans out. Lobo is not in the book, so I'm actually curious how Lobo. He makes sense to add him in terms of like knowing how the story goes in the book. But I'm very curious how Lobo's inclusion, how it changes the story, or maybe enhances it, or maybe it takes away. We'll see. But I thought this was a really good trailer. I'm really excited about this one. This movie directed by Craig Gillespie, written by Anna Nogueira. And again, of course, this is an adaptation of the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow comic. If I was you, I would read the comic. I would read the comic. Sometimes people say, I don't want to read the book before I watch the movie. I would read it. I would read it because I think, again, sometimes when you see stuff, you say stuff like that, and then you see a movie that, again, may be a little unorthodox from what you may be expecting from an adaptation, you may come in automatically angry. It's like, I read it first and see if you like it, and then see how this movie is different, because it's going to be different. There are already differences you can see even from the trailer. But read the book, see how you like it, and then and then watch the movie and see if you like that. And maybe you'll hate the book, and maybe that'll make you not want to watch the movie, or maybe you'll see the movie and hate the movie too. I don't know. I did like the book, so that's where we're gonna leave it though, man. Shout out to DC, shout out to Supergirl. Excited to see that again. That's gonna be out June 26th. I want to thank you guys all for checking out this edition of 40 Days and Counting. Again, I'll be back Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern time. So we'll be doing a live stream Friday, 8 a.m. We'll see what we get into. We certainly will have picks for the Final Four and a national championship game. I'm sure there'll be plenty of other news happening in both sports, pop culture, whether it's superhero movies, wrestling. I could have gotten to wrestling, but there was so much stuff in the show I couldn't fit in. Raw last night. I watched Raw, but I couldn't fit into this show. Could be wrestling, could be music, could be anything. But I'm definitely excited about continuing 40 Days and Counting and continuing this journey with you guys. So, thank you guys again. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media on YouTube. If you can, give me a like on this video and comment in the comment section. I greatly appreciate that. Be sure to also follow me on social media. EJ_Stewart is where we're streaming on X. Action EJ is where we're streaming on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, Action EJ as well. And that'll do it. I'll see you guys in a little bit. I'm EJ Stewart. Have a good night.